Kiesia here, also known as Kay. Welcome to Conversations with Kay. That I love having conversations with people, and I've met some dynamic people since I moved to New York. And one of them is one of my good friends, Fofanah. He is an ad strategist as well as a national speaker. We met a little over a year ago, and he's brought nothing but good, education and fun times to my life. So we're gonna be breaking down his career, how he got started. Is it a passion for him? Is he really happy about it? And what's the next steps for him? So, Abu, you want to tell us a little bit about what you like to do?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, first of all. Conversations with Kay. Definitely excited to be on here. But to talk about a little bit more about what I do, that's a great question, because I normally ask that question to everyone else because depending on who you're speaking to, I do a little bit of something different. But for the most part, I run a digital marketing agency, and I focus on creating strategies and ads, Facebook, Instagram ads, with different clients and influencers. So it's more like customer acquisition. So a lot of times clients come to me because they want to increase, engagement on their platform. They want to attract new leads, or they want to increase sales or get in front of a new audience, and they don't know how.
So basically, you're the guru behind all the brands. So if you guys if you're building the brand, and if you're interested in how to monetize on social media and create a space where people can recognize you and always see your brand and in a way that's kind of going to stick with them, this is the guy you're going to talk to. So let's take it back way before you got to now. So Abu is 25. He's already doing amazing things at 25. It's pretty much going to be like what Drake said, 25 sitting on 25 mil.
Fine.
So let's take it back to what kind of at your younger ages, what did you see yourself? What was your dream job when you were, you're in your young years, your adolescent years? What did you say I want to do when I grow up?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, there wasn't a specific job I thought about. When I was younger, I was into sports, and I thought I was going to be a professional soccer player. But I was more into the lifestyle that I could live, right? Being able to help family, financially, being able to help friends financially, and traveling. And so I was so driven by a lifestyle, and I thought being a professional soccer player, because the money you make, but also you get to travel as a professional athlete. And so growing up, that was my goal. I never thought I'd be where I am today, but you experience a lot of pivots in your life, and I think I experienced a lot of that, and including mentors coming into your life. You experience more things, and then you almost start to try to connect the dots. Okay, I have these things going on. I'm good at this thing. So how do I sort of use it to my advantage and put myself in the best position?
I was a fashion designer when I was younger. I just knew I was going to be this, big fashion designer going to FIT. And my stepmom brought me a mannequin. My mom bought me a sewing machine. So I can resonate with that, because it's what you thought you were going to do in life. And for me, it was, again, just about the vision of what came with it.
Right.
It wasn't an actual passion of mine. It was just kind of all right, let me do this and get rich and famous. Yay! So yeah, I can definitely understand where you were at when you kind of got younger. But at what point, in your teenage years, did you start to see yourself move into a different direction? You mentioned mentors.
Yeah.
Were they did they kind of guide you straight into it, or did you kind of see yourself kind of okay, wait, that may not be it for me. What do I want to do?
Yeah, I think that what ends up happening is that other people start to see the things that you're good at, depending on the environment, whether you're in a group project or, even when I was playing soccer, oh, Boo, you have really good leadership qualities. You're able to talk to your teammates and get through to them. Little things like that, they started to notice. And, when they would tell me, then I started to notice and say, okay, how can I get better at this little thing that I do really well? And over time, whether that was on the field or off the field, that same work ethic, that same skills translated over. And then there are mentors that came into my life. When I was in high school, I was part of this one program called Alpha Boule. And Alpha Boule was made up of other successful black men. Yeah. And up until that point, I had only saw the black men that I saw were athletes and rappers. So that's why I was I want to be an athlete.
That's what we know. Growing up, as a male, of course, you're going to say, I want to be an athlete or basketball player, football player, or a rapper. And as a woman, it's I want to be a singer, or an actress or something of those sorts, or a model. And so I can understand. And it's we're kind of short. So we're the short people in this world. So I was like, I can't be a model. I'm not skinny enough to be, this. I was like, all right, what can you really do? So you start to kind of, life starts to teach you who you are too. Just not like,
for sure.
You create this kind of space, and it sounds like from you that like through other kind of things you were doing like soccer, you were able to build your own leadership skills and kind of hone in on those things that kind of made you. And that's how you start to develop self at that point. And it's like different outside kind of like influences kind of just start to okay, now I'm starting to dig who I am now. Like I'm starting to really feel it. You start to travel more. Did you travel when you were younger?
Yeah, I traveled when I was younger, and that was just in the beginning up until high school I hadn't like traveled out the country. Up until high school, my way of escaping at that point was like through reading. So I would read all these books, but I knew my family couldn't just afford to like put me on a flight to go elsewhere. So like that imagination, reading these books took me to those destinations. And then when I was finally able to travel, once I got into college, like I had already been there in my mind. So when I was going to these places like Paris or London, I felt like I had already like been there. And it was just a great experience, but to actually go there to now sort of explore more from, being in high school, having all these imaginations and dreams of what it would be like seeing the Eiffel Tower and things like that. Yeah.
In college, where did you go to college?
I went to Penn State undergrad.
Okay.
At Penn State, I was the honors program, so I'm gonna shout them out. The Schreier Honors College. Yeah, I gotta shout them out because it was definitely hard to get into.
Yeah.
And part of Penn State, they were a smaller college inside of bigger Penn State, and only 300 people got in each year. So
what did you study when you were at Penn?
I studied supply chain and information systems. So that
no idea.
I know most people don't
no idea
but everyone knows what Amazon is. So Amazon, the reason they're Amazon is because if you order something today, you'll get it tomorrow.
Okay.
So everything that happens in between is logistics and strategy.
Oh, it's right over my
head.
Yeah, that
that's supply chain.
You say Amazon, I know what you're talking about. I can't get into that, but he knew what it meant, and he seen the picture before it was already born. So it was like, okay, and that's something that I feel like is like really important too. Is kind of like knowing the value in something before it becomes really popular, and I feel like you're really great at that. Since I've known you, you've kind of been tacked onto things that are like the new things, like. Running ads is running ads, but running ads on social media is a very different thing. And so to see you, and before hearing you break it down, sometimes I'm like, I just thought like, okay, running ads is like a commercial, or you go on YouTube now and there's an ad every 10 minutes between your videos and stuff. But to now to see, how big Instagram has become, and to see him not only say, I'm going to work with bloggers and teach them how to blog, or I'm going to show them how to brand or hashtag. It's like he said, I'm going to go a different avenue and teach people how to run ads. And we'll get into that in a little bit. I don't want to skip over anything. I definitely want to kind of understand more too, like the mentors in your life, how valuable and like what kind of role did they play? Was it your parents? Was it like people from outside the family, or who were your mentors?
I think that, obviously like your immediate parents or, someone you look up to growing up. Like my mom, single parent, raised 7 kids by herself. So that was definitely, my fuel that drove me was her, right? Because we were poor, we didn't have any resources, and, she'd always preach education as the greatest equalizer. So I definitely took that from her, and the work ethic of her working 2 to 3 jobs to provide for her family. But along the way, as you start to sort of figure out what it is you want to do, and you start putting in that work, everyone around you, it's like the world conspires, and they're like, okay, let's help him get to where he needs to go. And so they'd be mentors. The first one was my first grade teacher, Jean Myers, who she was so big, she'd always tell me like, Abu, you could write your ticket anywhere in the world. And when I moved from that school district, when I graduated in high school, I go home, and in the letter, she sent me a letter, and it says, see, I told you could write your ticket anywhere in the world.
Wow.
But she was the first person that saw so much great potential in me when no one else did. And then throughout life, my soccer coach became one of my other mentors who really guided me. He was someone that had been there, done that, had a successful business. And so there people started coming into your life, and a mentor isn't someone, you have 20 years, right? You can, but there are mentors that you need for 1 month, or you need for a season, right? just so they could teach you that thing
and
that
having
you
a
need.
different mentor for different areas of your life.
For sure.
I have
for sure.
mentors I have a spiritual mentor. I have
Right.
a mentor that's guided me and more like a mother figure, and I have had the educational mentors as well, and so everyone kind of plays their role, and so I can definitely understand like how each of those people have played a role to help you develop to be who you are now. And it's like as a soccer coach, you kind of you can either be a coach to them and just go home and like, oh, those are my players, or you can take it a step further and really make an impact on someone's life. And so I can definitely understand how that went for you. Did your parents also play like a major part in like helping you or kind of mentoring you? I know you said that your mom worked a lot and kind of, did the best she could to provide, and did that kind of make a huge impact on like how your work ethic is today? Yeah,
no doubt. And I think that, she did the best with what she had at that time. And you can't really connect the dots unless you look backwards, right? But when you're in the moment, you have 7 kids, you have bills to pay, you're trying to do the best you can for them. You sort of like working 2 to 3 jobs, like it is what is required, right? Because she didn't have a college education, she didn't even have a high school education. So, she had to go with what she knew. And but the one thing she did was, no matter what area we were living in, we almost like we had second and third moms, right? Who would, always take care of us. Yeah, and
takes a village.
I like remember, growing up, our next door neighbor, her name was Anna. So I would always go over there. She was Hispanic, Spanish, Puerto Rican. So she'd always make like Spanish food, and like I was close friends with her son. Even to this day, that's like my brother. But she'd always she'd become the second mom. Like we'd go there for like Christmas. She'd like get us presents. So it's like it was just there were other people like that village that also saw his mom's always at work. He's such a great kid. He's getting these good grades. And so they stepped in. Like they could have did that wasn't their responsibility. Right. Their responsibility was like take care of my own kids. But that shows a lot about their hearts, right? Where their heart was at, for them to open up and allow like me and my siblings.
And that's that old school way of kind of being raised too. Because I know growing up, like even your extended, your uncles, your aunts, and your neighbors and stuff. Like your parents were the kind of people like back in the day. Parents would be like, "Oh, what did he tell you to do?" They had the right to like whoop you or tell you to stop doing something. Nowadays people are so like, no, say anything to my child. But it does make such a difference because there's different styles of parenting, there's different styles of kind of raising people, and it might be something that your mom maybe didn't know or couldn't provide that your neighbor could, and kind of could help you in certain areas that maybe she couldn't. So I mean, like you said, it takes a village, and I definitely can respect it, and kind of own that too, because I feel like when my dad he worked 3 jobs always. And he raised me with my stepmom, and so that's where my work ethic came from as well. I mean, I started work at 15 at the Spam Mobile. Wow. You know what Spam is?
No,
I worked at the Spam Mobile, and so I remember my first job going out there working a 12-hour shift at the Spam Mobile at the New York State Fair, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna pass out spam. Like looking back on it, I probably wish I'm like. Girl, I would not tell people that I did that, but I'm proud of that because I knew at a very young age that I had to go out there and work for the things I want. I think that looking at you, maybe in high school we would have a different conversation. We'd be like, oh man, some of our friends got it easy, and it's easier for them. They don't have to work so hard, but it's with us, we had to start working early on. But we understand the value of $1 more now. We understand how to lead in this world and how to kind of create our own space. And hopefully have our own huge corporations and businesses one day, so that way we can lead that and other people that we know into those same businesses.
That's
and
true.
So having that your mom, watching your mom work those 2 to 3 jobs, having my dad work that much, and then us going right after them and trying to work. I didn't work 2 jobs in high school too, but it was like you take that stuff for granted when you're younger, but it's it really helps when you're older. Now you're up at 5 a.m. every morning, busting your butt, and you're not going to bed some nights till late, and you're really put your all into what you're doing. So that brings us to okay, now we're moving into college years. What's it like? What happened in college? What is what fun did you have in college that kind of took away? Because I feel like the Abu I know is this super Abu's fun, but he's a different type of fun. Abu's not the get buck wild and go all out and like I couldn't even imagine even college. Like I remember times in college where we did crazy things, but I just want to know like maybe one experience from college that you felt like was really a rager for you.
Yeah, I don't know if I haven't.
See what I mean?
Pulling all night. I don't know. I mean,
pulling all nighter.
Yeah,
wow.
I once stayed up like 3 days straight. That was very difficult.
For what? For school?
No, I was teaching myself how to code. And so I know. I was I kept asking someone to build me a website, and they just take forever. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just teach myself how to do it.
I think the only time I taught myself how to code was when I was on MySpace.
Oh yeah.
Remember back in MySpace days when you had to, when you wanted something flashing across your screen, or you wanted the music playing, or you wanted font a certain way, you had to code. Yeah. So I mean that's funny. So clearly you've always been the kind of person that just stayed focused, stayed to your grain. Yeah. Now we've obviously seen, I mean, you're 25, but yet you've lived a full life already. You've kind of seen things that maybe some 25-year-olds haven't been able to see or experience, and having the background you have has kind of led you to like this point where you can stand on your own in this world and now take care of your family and give back to your mom, and so how is being an ad strategist paying off now? Like what does that feel like? What's the day-to-day for you now with that?
Yeah, so it's when you leave 9 to 5. Well, first when I was at I started this thing as a side project while I was working over on Wall Street and things like that. We forgot to mention he worked on Wall Street, guys. He left his Wall Street job. And so this was like a side thing, and that's why I say it's really important to utilize while you're working a 9 to 5, right? It's Jack Ma always says it's not what you do from 9 to 5 that determines your next 5 years, but it's what you do from 5 to 9. Mm-hmm. So what are you doing after work? And I had started this as a side project because I was really good with data and numbers and strategy and tech, and so I would go and help businesses understand really how to monetize online. Yeah. And so at first it was just helping them in a consulting capacity, strategy, okay, this is what I think you should do next. And eventually, when ads started becoming popular, years ago, I started sort of teaching myself how to use ads, how to use social media as a business tool rather than as a social tool. Right. And most of us use it as a social tool. We get on there, we talk, we engage, we have conversations, and so that's using it as social. But when you start thinking about, okay, I have this brand, I'm trying to grow this brand, how can I utilize it as a business tool? Your perspective change. You're doing everything with intent, right? You're not going on there to waste time. You're going on there everything with intent.
My life on social media now. No, you're absolutely 100% right. Last spring, I became a blogger, and literally I have not been the same person with social media since. I can honestly say at first it was still kind of fresh. Last March, I think I started, and I was still trying to get the hang of it, and I was having someone teach me how to become a blogger. Right. You teach someone how to, she was teaching me how to hashtagging and this and that, but it wasn't what she was teaching me that changed me. It was what I started to think about that changed my mind. And it was what you just said is I just started to realize how can you monetize off of this, and how I no longer looked at Instagram particularly and Twitter and Snapchat and Facebook as my own. I started to look at it as my own business, and I was if I must get on here, it will be I'm clocking into a job every day. Yeah. So I stopped, and it just happened organically. It wasn't even I didn't train myself to do that. One day I just knew I didn't want to be on there in a certain capacity anymore. Right. I didn't want to be as accessible to people anymore. Now Instagram stories, we all feel like we know each other from Instagram stories, but it's still a limit you can kind of create. There's something, a space you can create between you and your audience through what you are giving them. And I think that knowing your brand, knowing what you want to give, you are very present. You have a good following on social media. You've been able to build a good audience with you, and they've kind of grown with you. And over even the last year, I've seen you grown so much since last August. Right. And I'm wow, he's made so much happen. And so I think it's very important now for people to see and hear and meet people like Abu to talk to them about how can I just not get on every day and just just to lollygag and just be on there or be in people's business or be on the shade room. I mean, I love a good shade room post. Don't get me wrong. I love a good shade room post. But I'm also at this space where it's like, you can't want to get on, and you can, at this point in our life, you can't want to do anything every day and not get something from it. Right. What are you gaining from it? And that's how I feel about it. Even if it's not money every single time, there has to be a connection that's building from it. There has to be a network that's building from it. There has to be some type of audience that once I do get to that point where I make money, these are the same people that's with me along the way.
Right. And it's almost like you have to decide how you want to use the tool, right?
Yeah.
A lot of anything is bad for you, right? Mm-hmm. But you have to decide, do I want to grow out this community? Do I want to build out a brand? Like, what specifically do I want to use this tool for? Because it's easy to not use it for anything and then spend 10 hours a day on Instagram or on Facebook or on Twitter.
Yeah.
And so when I decided that, I'm going to use it as a business, and when my clients decide they want to use it as a business, now it's like, okay, and how are we going to monetize, right?
Yeah. How
do we monetize from day one rather than waiting 5 years later? Because by then it may pass you by. So it's like, you built this community, now how do we go about monetizing from this community and, just moving forward?
Yeah, and it's important to, especially if you're a creative of any sort, you should definitely be using your social media platform to kind of create a space around yourself that you can gain something from it. I mean, like I said, even if you're not exactly trying to make money right now, it's like, you should be, but if you're not, like, you have to be having some kind of purpose to be on there every day. Because what's also happening, and this is an interesting conversation I'm going to bring to you that I had with someone recently, is what's happening is we have this special word called curating. That's being tossed around a lot. You go into a lot of Instagram bios and it's a curator of some sort. I'm an event coordinator, so now you see event curator, you see a brand curator, you see all these different things that's like curating. And to me, what I'm gathering from our generation and the whole millennial generation is just that we're so busy trying to curate things that we're missing it sometimes. We're missing that point. If you're so busy, now there's a difference. His job is to make ads for brands, and that's how they make their money.
Right.
For people to recognize them and more recognition of their brands. It's like getting all these commercials we've seen growing up on television. Now we know television is phasing out, so we see the power of social media and how that's kind of just taking its place. People are not really sitting down watching TV anymore. They're on their laptops, they're on their phones, they're on their iPads watching TV. Hell, they're even on their watches watching stuff.
Right.
So now we have what he's doing. Now, what my concern is with our generation is, if you're always so busy curating things, when do you have time to actually just live? So it's about finding that balance. And I've noticed, I even had to check myself recently and say, are you waking up every day to curate stuff to put on social media? Are you actually doing things and letting social media be a part of that?
Yeah.
And so it's about like finding that balance, because if you're so busy curating all the time that you are not just actually just living and capturing what you're actually doing, then there's a different, like for me, there's a difference between reality and perception, where what we're doing was constantly feeding the perception.
Yeah.
Because you're building into a brand so much that you get so stuck that you forget to live along the way. And you become such an ad, such a salesman, such a influencer or of some sort, and a brand ambassador, that you forget to actually just enjoy the process.
Right.
I had to check myself and say, do I actually want this? And I do want it, but I want to be real.
Right.
Like if you're gonna sell this Tommy Hilfiger shirt right now, I don't want you to have to wake up this morning and particularly just be like, I'm in a Tommy Hilfiger shirt. It's just like, no, catch me while I'm actually wearing the Tommy Hilfiger shirt in my best light.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and so I feel that someone like you who runs ads and understands branding really well, that is something that makes me nervous. How do you feel about the future of kind of like social media and the way it's going as far as curating everything around us?
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, it's more important to be authentic than anything.
Yeah.
Because people are like smart, right? People aren't like, they could Google, they could find out who you are, they could find out the brands that you're running. So you really can't hide anymore.
Yep.
And so, just look at brands, executives and CEOs of major 500 companies. Once they say something about the Black community, we end up finding out, and then we try to disassociate ourselves with those
100%.
brands. And so you really can't hide anymore. And what
Can't
you
get past
say
anything.
and what you put out there has power and resonates with, you know, the audience, whether you intend it for it to do so or not. And so it's really important to just be true to yourself more than anything. And the brands that are curating all the time and really not who they say they are, eventually either one or two things going to happen. One, their audience is going to find out the truth, or two, they're also struggling with this internal battle, right? Like, should I continue doing this, right? Or should I, you know, really live who I truly am?
Yeah.
So like there are these battles going on. If it's not with your audience, sometimes it's happening internal.
Yeah, and that's why we see the rise of mental illness a lot now, and you see a lot of suicides. I mean, hate to get so deep, but it's all relative. It's very relative to the things that's going on. It's like, you know, we have to address things like that. And I hate to step away from like what you're doing, but it's just like, these are things we have to, like, if you're going to work with someone in the brand, you want to make sure they're good.
Right,
always.
right.
If you're, you know, God rest the dead, but Kate Spade, for instance, what if you were a person running the ads, or you were in control of that brand and like everything she had going on, but then you don't know that she's internally going crazy? Like, that's a liability right there. Right. So it's like, we have to make sure, just as much as we're like, you know, we can be these amazing business people in this world and we can make so much money in this world, but if we don't take care of ourselves, that's another huge part of like being successful. Being successful with yourself also means self-care, taking care of yourself. And so like, how important is that to you and your career right now? Because you're 25 and you are on another level. Like, you bypass a lot of other 25-year-olds success-wise. You're trying, but you're doing it at the same time. So what does that mean to you to kind of like keep the balance of like making sure you're good, and like, as much as work I'm putting in, I'm also giving myself a lot of that self-care? What do you do?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. And I mean, it's always been a challenge, no matter whether I was in high school or college or working 9 to 5. It's because you're always going to have to give something up. Yeah. And whether that's, you know, time with, you know, spending with your friends, or time with your family, or, you know, like, you're always giving something up to sort of try to find like this complete balance, which I don't think exists. But, you know, the things that I've done is really been investing in myself, meaning, okay, I could either spend the next few hours cooking, or I could go out to eat. What's easier? The easiest thing is going out to eat. Or, you know, there's another alternative. I could pay someone to meal prep for me.
Or that.
And that is a healthier option. Obviously, you know, it's an investment to myself, right? It's like, okay, I could either spend $200 this week eating out, or I could spend $150 having someone meal prep the entire week. Yeah. And it'll be a lot easier for me because I can just grab it and go and walk out the door. So it's really like, okay, this is the lifestyle that you decide to live, or this is the lifestyle I decide to live. Now, how can I sort of make sure that, you know, all the gaps, how can I make sure I'm like living to the best of my abilities and potential with the lifestyle that I have? So I'm not saying like change your lifestyle. Sometimes you may have to, depending on when I was working on Wall Street, working 80 hours a week, like something had to change. Yeah. But with the lifestyle that you currently have, first evaluate, well, where could I plug in different things to make sure I'm being more effective and efficient? And one way was like to invest in someone that could meal prep, right? Maybe you're investing in a personal trainer, right? So really the lifestyle that you have, what can you do to sort of enhance it to make sure that, you know, you're good and you're checking yourself?
Yeah, I think all of it, like I said, is all very relative. And people, I mean, just as much as, like I said, focusing on his business and running ads and having all of these clients, he just has to take care of himself first. And meal prepping is definitely important. Your health, your wealth, everything in between is very important. So I definitely it's been so great to talk to Abu. I want to definitely wrap it up by asking some more, I guess, a couple more important questions for me, for the future generations or people not even so far, but like even people who are like a year or two behind you, who are trying to get to where you are, who may be struggling and just trying to find a way. Like, what do you feel that this is a passion for you, or more of just like you see it as just like, it's a project that I'm kind of getting at right now? Because I feel like that's important nowadays when you talk about passions versus like just being out there just for the money. Like,
right. No, I think you have to identify like the core competency. Like, I love helping people. I love giving value. So I'm in a space where I'm doing both of those things.
Right.
So like, this isn't the final stage for me, but this is a stage where I'm able to do both the things I love doing, at the same time learn a lot. And so it's like, okay, with where you're going, right, are you getting those skills that you need to eventually, when you step into that role, like of a CEO, right, or of a brand ambassador, like, do you have the adequate skills, right? And so I'm almost positioning myself to make sure I'm always gaining more value, because at the end of the day, the person that has the most value, the person that has the most skill set, or really good at what they're doing, it's harder for people to let them go. It's easier for people to reach out to them like, hey, do you want to work together, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, how do you become more valuable where it's harder for, like, people will not be able to move forward without you being there. And it's harder for people to make those decisions without you there. So how do you make sure you're the most valuable in the room? And so that's my mindset of each project that I'm focused on. I'm like, okay, these are the things I'm really good at. These are the things I'm not so good at. These are the things I need to work on.
Right.
And so that's how I move forward, and that's, you know, the story of my life, all the way up, leading up to this point. And even now, those are still some of the questions I ask myself.
Yeah, because I mean, you still got so much life to live and so much to learn. And I mean, even though you've reached certain levels of success now, it's like I'm excited to see where your journey is. He just kind of dropped a bomb on me today that he's leaving me in New York City. He's going to be stepping out. He's going to be going back to school, going to Harvard, and traveling a bit. So he has some amazing things going. And I mean, if you have one just great piece of advice, or maybe a quote or something that you live by that'll help that someone and that's looking to be where you are, maybe looking to get into the whole branding or running ads or this whole social media world, what is one piece of advice that you have for them?
Like, as cheesy as it sounds, like, I really think people should just try, right? Like trying is literally, no one has it figured out.
Yeah.
And people are just trying different things to see what works and what's not. And the perception is, when you look at the people that you admire, is that they have life figured out. And the reality is they don't at all. They're just trying what feels good to them, what feels natural, what feels challenging to them. But at the end of the day, you just need to try. Most times, especially people our age, what ends up happening is they never make that list of all the things that they're interested in, all the things they want to try. They get paralyzed, and they make all these excuses as to why they can't even try. Like, trying doesn't mean you're going to fail. Trying doesn't mean you're going to succeed. But trying is, you're going to learn what you do and don't want to do.
You really don't know unless you try. You really don't. I feel like that's something, and I'm so happy you ended it with that, because that's something I personally have struggled with, is getting in my own way. It's the art of getting in your own way, folks. Like, you know, you can have as many dreams, as many goals, as many expectations, but if you do not get out there and just, like he said, simply just try them out, you know, if you, whatever you're trying to do, you know, I didn't know what it was going to be like to be a blogger. I just started putting pictures on Instagram, and I started to learn, but I started to really hone in on what made me me. Like, what did people want to see from me? People like my style, but then people love to see me in the gym, but then people like to see, you know, what I'm eating sometimes. So it's like, once you kind of, you know, try everything, and even if you're unsuccessful, just trying it out, you're gonna get to a space of some type of realization of what's going on in your world, or what you're great at and what you're not so great at, and kind of getting there. So I feel like that's a perfect kind of segue into, like, so this show was created to bridge the gap between perception and reality. I will be featuring a lot of great entrepreneurs, creatives, and a lot of just dope people that are in my life and my network that I think that are something that someone needs to know besides their social media persona. And so, like Abu, he has this whole seriousness that you get to see, and he runs ads and he's amazing on Instagram, but, you know, he has a story to tell just like a lot of other people, and that's what's going to bring us together and kind of create more of a unit between us as millennials, us as entrepreneurs, us as creatives. So yeah, thank you for tuning in for the first episode of Conversations with Kay.